Spice up your bookshelf and open your palate. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. This is Season 13, Episode 13. I'm your host, Dean Jones. Today we're meeting Rowena Scherer, a globe-trotting chef on a mission to spark culinary adventures for kids and for kids in all of us. Growing up in Malaysia, Rowena found joy in the rhythmic sizzle and fragrant swirl of family kitchens. Fast forward, Wall Street hustle meets wanderlust, and Rowena knew it was time to create those same Epicurean memories in for her own children. Cue the French Culinary Institute, a world of exotic ingredients, and bam, Eat to Explore was born. Those aren't just meal kits, folks. These are explorer boxes bursting with authentic recipes, cultural tidbits, and cool keepsakes. Each one is a passport to a new culinary land. Now Rowena shares her passion and recipes in her new book, A Taste of the World. So grab your apron, your appetite, and let's get cooking with Rowena Scherer. Buckle up, bookworms. It's going to be delicious.
Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. Today I'm very, very honored to be speaking with author Rowena Scherer, who is in New York, talking to us. Rowena, I want to thank you for being on the podcast today, and I want to talk about your new book, A Taste of the World, that I really love. For our listeners who are not familiar with your work, can you talk about your background and where you're from?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Dean, for having me on your podcast. I'm Rowena Scherer, founder of Eat to Explore and also the author of Taste of the World, a collection of celebrating global flavors. I'm originally from Malaysia, so I grew up there in a town called Muar, and then I then went abroad to New Zealand for college, and after that I've been all over the world, and now I live in New York. My previous life was in finance that brought me to the States. But throughout my journey and life, food plays a huge part of my journey. And hence I'm now in the food world, trying to educate not just food, but culture, which is a very important part of life.
As somebody who loves books, I really was eager to talk to you because I was really tickled by your book and loved it. And I'm going to kind of unpack why. So when I was young, and I say this often, like we're spoiled, I think, by books today with in a good way with young people because they have such a wonderful, diverse selection of books nowadays. And when I was young, honestly, when I was a kid, like late 60s, early 70s, the selection for children sucked. It wasn't great at all. And the kids' cookbooks were awful, except my mother got me, I think, a French cookbook for kids, and it wasn't dumbed down. It was like real recipes and stuff for real food. And I adored that. And then, of course, you'd have the other kid cookbooks that would have stupid things like hot dog pizza and stuff like that. And you're like, as a kid, you're kind of insulted. Like, it's kind of insulting as a kid when you get stuff that's dumbed down to you, I think. And like, people don't often, and as a librarian, I see this, people don't often write books that are the books they would want to read, I think, sometimes. And I feel like you wrote the book that you wanted to read when you were a kid. I think that any young person would love this, but also it's like a really decent cookbook in and of itself. I will use this myself. I don't feel like it's just for kids. Like I feel like anybody could read this. So I want to talk to you about your book a little bit and why you wrote it and how you wrote it and talk about it in depth. Because as a librarian, I really love books, and getting to see a very well-made book is really exciting for me. And I know that other people like this too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I can agree with you more, Dean, about how, even in today's world, we still treat kids as if they're not sophisticated. Yeah. Kids these days are much more advanced than adults actually aware, and that we shouldn't be dumping down on even food for them, right? The number of people I know, and which is kind of why I started this, is, you have kids that only know chicken fingers and, burgers and pizza and pasta. That's a wealth of flavors out there that they are dying to learn. And as we know, every human start with, you got to expand your palate. It doesn't grow overnight. It's over time, right? And if you treat children like an adult and you make meal that feeds an adult and actually feed a kid, they will grow up to have this very sophisticated palate. and it's just natural. So we shouldn't be dumping down on their food or their recipe or the cookbook that we're going to buy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I think like, for example, like the kid menus at restaurants are always kind of insulting.
I know. Why do we even have a kid menu, right?
It shouldn't. It should just be a menu. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I don't know why people always go to that. And they're like, here's your like training wheel menu that has like
I
nothing
know.
on it.
And you know what? And this can start since they're 3. Like get kids they're young to be involved in the kitchen, like rolling meatballs, stirring sauces, or whisk up a dressing. That's all you need to get them excited, to get them involved. And then over time they'll be like, oh, I want to try that. What did I make? Right? So the experience, the routine, the exposure is so important for kids.
What inspired you to write A Taste of the World? And like I I want to like even like digress a little bit too, because it's got a very specific look to it and it looks like a very intentional cookbook. So when you were thinking about this, what were you thinking? How did you conceptualize this?
So first of all, Dean, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I actually have a business actually I still have the business and the
Yeah.
cookbook is part of the business. So
Yes.
my whole mission is, I think, as you talk about, do not dumb down kids' flavor or palate or cookbook. I mean, I think kids can be an adult in their exploration of food. And my whole mission is to make kids the future global citizens, not just from a culture perspective, but a food perspective. So that has always been my mission. And just because food is an easy way to get kids excited and family to share, and it's also a family event. That was the foundation of Eat to Explore. And I grew up in Malaysia where there is no kids menu. There is
Right.
no separate between a kid and adult. I grew up eating everything that's put on my table, right? And then I come to this country and that's such a big dress difference for me that
Yeah.
I see my kids and their family and their friends will come over. It's like, what you making, Mrs. Scherer? And then I'm like, well, I'm just making this. My kids are eating exactly what I'm eating. And they want to know. They are curious. And also technology now and also media, they're seeing all this, little chef competition and kids are making real food. And so
Yeah.
I think, we as a society are doing the service to our children, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They need to be a global citizen, not just from a cultural perspective, so that they actually are having a conversation at home about what's happening in the world or what is the historical aspect of things, and then eating the food, so which is kind of what Eat to Explore is all about.
Can you talk a little bit more about Eat to Explore? When did you start this, and what's been the experience that you've had since it was started?
So it's been more than 5 years. So Eat to Explore has been around. Started in 2008, late 2018. It actually is it started out more as a subscription service, but now you can buy a single box. So we have 24 countries. Every country is a box where we provide you with 3 recipes, spices, and condiments. But you have to buy your own fresh ingredients. And the reason behind it, it's a learning moment. Going to shop for groceries, knowing what's in season, going to a grocery store with a budget, it's all a learning moment. And it's a family activity. And I feel very strongly about making it as an activity for the whole family. And then we also provide educational material. There's a booklet to learn the geography, music, art, history. There's links to books and links to YouTube videos, virtual museums, music playlist. So it's a wealth of experience in a box. Where I work with, I'm a trained chef. I went to French Culinary Institute, but I also more and more work with local chefs for each of the country to kind of make it as authentic as possible. And also, one thing that kids might need to learn, and I acknowledge that, is the heat spice, right? But
Right.
spices doesn't have to be having that heat spice. So we actually reduce the chili spices, but all the spices have amazing flavors
Yeah.
without the heat. And so, and the recipes are as authentic as we can, and we try to simplify it a little bit. And we try to make it a little bit more sometimes a little bit more modern, but it's truly, I feel, as authentic as we can get for each of the country we covers. And then also in each recipe, and it's also in the cookbook, there's a story for every recipes, right?
Right.
So we tell the story, we tell the fun fact about the ingredients. So it's everything is about learning.
What's been your experience in the past years since you started Eat to Explore? Like, what have you experienced? Have you heard any feedback from people? Because I imagine this is kind of transformative to people's families, and it has an impact
Yes.
on people.
So we started in late 2018, and of course, COVID hit in 2020, and that's kind of where we started to grow and our brand becoming more popular because people are homeschooling, people are at home, they're cooking more, and it has continued to grow. And now we are big with homeschoolers. We work with schools, we work with corporates. So it's a continue. I mean, can lie to you, starting a business is hard, much
Yes.
harder than my previous life working for corporates on banking. But it really feeds my soul. It's what I stood for, and it's my passion. So I really think this country, or rather the world, needs something like this to be more educated. And we're already very connected technologically. So what about making it more intimate and having it at home, having a conversation? And the other thing about technology too is, I know a lot of parents are struggling with kids are just too much on their screens, right? They're in social media too much. Like when you cook, your hands is clear. You have to cook, you got to use your fingers, to make something. So everybody needs a break from your phone and your computers. And so that's also, parents are seeking for activity where you can do it together. Why not making cooking as a family activity? Doesn't have to do it very often. You can just say, once a week I'm doing this. And that's when we go in grocery shopping. We're cooking together every Sunday. Make it a routine. And I did that growing up, and I see the benefits of it for myself. It builds my confidence. It built not just knife skill and cooking skill, but my international exploration skill, right?
Right.
I was able to travel to New Zealand on my own for the first time, and then subsequently live in Hong Kong, in South Korea, in Geneva. Like I've been everywhere because it's that little skills of confidence that I've built from
Yeah.
cooking.
Now, your book describes food as a way to weave memories and transport us across continents. Can you share a personal food memory that has stayed with you through the years?
Funny, it's why I started this with my family, why I started the business Eat to Explore. I was cooking with my kids in Thailand. And this is me being already working in the States, got my culinary degree. But I was so busy with working and managing kids, my family. I never exposed my kids to kitchen. I never exposed them to cooking. And so we were at a cooking class, and they were like 9 and 11. And they look at me, they're like, Mom, what do you want me to do with this onion? And I literally was so disappointed not with them, but with myself. So that
Right.
was my experience of like, hey, I have done that for myself and my experience, and yet I neglect to transfer that to my kids. And
Yeah.
now they're going into, you know, a teenager life, and they're missing out, right? And what kind of adult they're going to be if I fail to do it now? And that moment from that trip, I came back, and that's Eat to Explore was born. I went to my partners, and I'm like, I need a sabbatical because it's a wake-up call for me. If I don't do this now with my own kids, they're gonna like miss the whole experience. And so I started Eat to Explore.
I like that. That's excellent. The book features over 60 kid-friendly recipes from around the world. And I want to remind people again, it's kid-friendly but not dumbed down. So these are still viable, good, solid recipes that anybody would use. If you don't have kids, it's still excellent recipes. What are your tips for parents who want to get their kids excited about cooking and trying new foods? I think a lot of us have kids that only want to ever eat macaroni and cheese from the
Right.
box, from the box. And so, yeah, we're trying to like get them exposed to stuff. What are your tips for that?
So, my tips, and I've actually tested it with, not test, but actually did it with students at different schools. Get kids involved. Kids
Yeah.
are curious. And I have done cooking classes with kids when I first started, where they're like, what is this vegetable? I don't like vegetable. I don't ever eat vegetables. And then we cook and they like, oh my God, this is really tasty, right? So it's almost like it's repetition, it's routine exposure, right? You can't just say, oh my God, this is it. I'm doing it once. If it fails, I'm not doing it ever again. And I truly believe in not hiding the food, right? Don't blend your avocado and mix it into something and make, like, they need to see it. They need to go grocery shopping, know what it is, why it's good for them, right? Respect the kids. They are very smart human being, right? Give them the knowledge, give them the story, give them the why they should try it, and then expose them. And then, practice cooking with them, get them involved, dicing them when they are involved, and they actually spend the time doing it, they will try it. And over time, they will love it. So that's my advice is get your kids, create a routine, make it just keep testing, trying, and over time, they will build that palate to then want to try everything.
Now, this book each has individual chapters that each deal with a different country. In many ways, it's like it'd be a good companion piece to geography, I think, in many ways. And it kind of handles each individual culture and their cuisine. How did you decide which countries to feature? Because you really feature a wide, diverse range of cultures and different types of food.
Thank you. So first of all, I like to look at it in continents, which is why the book is actually categorized by continents, because continents actually derive a lot of the flavors too of each of the countries within that continent. So we block it into 5 continents. So it's Europe, Asia, Middle East, Africa, and Americas. And then within that continent, we have all the countries. So I definitely started with countries where I've lived in or have visited. And then I move on to countries where I know have history and a food culture, and also where I have strong friendships, or potentially looking at, chefs who can work with me as well. So that's kind of always how I structure it is, countries I've been and I love the food and does have a food culture, and then move on to, how to best create those recipes.
Excellent. I really loved the recipes that you included. It was always a pleasant surprise to see what you did for each different continent, and I just really loved it. I really want to just encourage people to go out and get this book because I was really excited by it, and I loved just seeing the different recipes and wanting to try different things. I think one of the things as somebody who was reading it, I was really inspired to say I want to really cook a lot of this stuff. I really think that it's got a great selection here. So now you mentioned in the book that you grew up in Malaysia. How has your Malaysian roots influenced your cooking and your approach to food?
So Malaysia is a melting pot. So it has 3 distinct cultures. They have Malay, which is the original locals, and then we have Chinese who migrated there a long time ago, and Indian. And my family actually come from what we call, my mom's side, it's Nyonya, which is, the Malay married Chinese. And so the cuisine is a lot of the spices mixed with Chinese cooking. And it's a very well-known cuisine called Nyonya that's available in Singapore, and also in Malacca and a few places in Penang. So because of how I grew up, where we always, have Malay cuisine and the Indian and the Chinese, grew up, my palate was already pretty sophisticated. So that impacted me about the food as a journey. And when I first came to the States, and my husband, who's American, always said, food is fuel. I just need protein and my carb and to survive. And I completely converted him, right? Because when you, I know, right? And now he's much more a food critic than me, and he's a vegan, most of all. And
Nice.
so I feel like it's how kids were raised. If you give them the opportunity to see and expand their view, that food is actually a lens to culture, and that you can actually learn about different country, which kids love, by the way. They love geography. And you can see, oh, this is the place we're visiting. And then you expose them to the food. That I feel like my experience and how I became a human being, an adult now, who's very comfortable in any country, can be your child. So I, again, do not dumb down. They need to be exposed. And by the way, one other thing to add on my cookbook, every step has an image. It may not be detailed, but at least it shows you certain steps. And kids are very visual, so that visual help them to get excited.
The book is very visually appealing, and there's a lot of little different tidbits of information. It's not just like a bunch of recipes. It's got a lot of information. You really kind of went to great lengths to kind of make people aware of the continents that you represented in your book, which I really loved. What it was, how do I put this? What was your input on the book? What was your vision, and how were you able to kind of translate that to the publishers?
So with the cookbook, it's a compilation of all the recipes we have. It's not all the countries. For Eat to Explore as a business, we have 24 countries. So this is a compilation of 20 countries. And so it's a compilation of the recipes that we already have on Eat to Explore. And Eat to Explore is just a little extension where, you get a subscription. You not only get the recipe cards, you actually get the spices and some of the hard to find condiments and grains. And you also get the booklet to learn about the country. So it's more a true cultural and food, whereas the cookbook is a compilation of recipes of all the different countries.
You mentioned that the book has the power to connect families and build lasting memories. Can you share an example of a time that a meal brought you closer to your loved ones?
I would say with my own family growing up in Malaysia, I now that I'm much older, that's always what I go to, and that's always how I remember spending time with my family is in the kitchen, like pounding and laughing with my sisters, and that's kind of the memories. And with my own family, my young kids actually tested every Sunday all the recipes with me. So all the recipes are truly tested by them. But now that they are young adults, we have a tradition of Thanksgiving where we cook together. So that's our Thanksgiving. Everyone make 1 or 2 dishes, and everybody chip in.
Nice, I like that. That'd be a good, I think, thing to have everybody kind of do. I think everybody should kind of adopt that. It'd be really kind of a neat experience to have everybody kind of share in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a tradition of cooking that do not stop, right? And
Right.
and I remember, yes, as a kid, they built that ability to cook. But now as an adult, if you have even once a year, it's huge for them. The kids love tradition, adults love tradition, and they have to come home for Thanksgiving. Let's just, now we can play music and have a glass of champagne.
Now, with Eat to Explore and with the cookbook, you introduce people to a lot of different global flavors. Are there any ingredients or dishes that you find yourself coming back to time and time again that are your favorites?
I have to say, Singapore soy chicken rice. So Singapore is famous for chicken rice, but this is like soy chicken. And I can kid you not, that is my go-to when I was young, to do it myself when I was young. And then when I have my children, it's so easy to make. We cook them all the time. And then even when my kids are back from college, they're like, Mom, please make the soy chicken. That's like, it's like home for them. So
Nice.
yeah.
I like that. Comfort food is good. I think that's the one thing that people remember, I think, through their lives. If you could travel to any country in the world and have a meal with any person, living or dead, I know this is kind of a tough question. Who would it be and where would you go?
I have the answer right away. I would ask Anthony Bourdain, what country should we explore together that will bring us the best out-of-body experience with food?
That would be great. I miss him so much.
Me
He's somebody
too.
I still love.
Me too.
So I want to ask you, what advice would you give to aspiring cooks and food lovers who want to explore the world through their own kitchens?
My advice would be, don't feel constrained by, that you need to travel to the physical location to really experience the joy of the culture and the food. I think, that's why I created Eat to Explore. Everybody can expose to different world, their food, their culture from home. And it's just a matter of want, not a matter of ability. And so if you want to do it, you can do it. And that should not be any constraint.
Excellent.
And I want to say, by delving into the flavors and tradition of the world, we open up doors to really understanding and really unify, the whole experience for society.
So now that you've written A Taste of the World and you're out promoting it, probably going to book signings and stuff, what is next for you?
I just really continue doing the work of like fostering global awareness and the importance of this, life skill. I mean, when I was young, I don't know about you, but we have home economics in school. There's no
Yes.
home
Yeah.
economics, right?
No.
And kids are studying just really traditional science and math, but life skills are so much more important that
Yeah.
they carry on in their life, whether it's, cooking, whether it's sewing, whether it's cleaning, like these are life skills that is no longer taught at schools. And people are now like, no idea what to do. So
I agree with you 100%.
yeah, nurturing global citizenship, nurturing life skills, it's going to be my mission for a while.
Rowan, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. Now, we're going to include links to A Taste of the World so people can purchase it online. There'll be links there. And also, I want to also provide links to the wonderful Eat to Explore official site you can go to as well. If you haven't used it, I suggest you do. It's really wonderful. And I think your family is going to really love it. So, Rowena, thank you for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to you today.
Thank you, Dean, for having me.
That was the wonderful Rowena Scherer sharing a taste of her new book, A Taste for Our World. You can find it wherever you buy your books. Just follow the links in the show notes. Next week, we'll be dishing up another delicious conversation. We'll be getting tips and tricks from the queen of big flavors, Kat Ashmore, author of the brand new cookbook, Big Bites. I can't wait to dive into that one. Until then, have a fantastic week filled with good food and even better company. See you back at the library.